Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sports Breakdown after a long time, and we are looking forward for the Test match series coming up. West Indies versus Sri Lanka. Obviously, we brought in a guest from the Caribbean, Machel Hewitt from the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Welcome. Yes.
Cheers, man. Thank you very much for having me on.
Guest from the Caribbean. I think someone's unmuted. Sorry, I think it's mine. Sorry, I'm really sorry for that. Yeah, we've got in Satwik as well from the Statsman. He check his account also on Instagram. Yeah, how Satwik? How has it been, Satwik? Yeah.
Yes, it's been good. And I have been following the cricket podcast for the last 1.5 years. So I've seen the interviews with Nicholas Puran once. So that was
Yeah.
quite intriguing to watch.
Sweet,
I
man.
think recently you did with Andre Fletcher, if I'm not mistaken. I watched that and it was really good the content, and with Samuel Badri as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
a recent one. Yeah. So a lot of cricketers, and I think you're partnered with CPL as well from this year, right? If I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
We were partnered with CPL. That's with the end of CPL, that's kind of come to a break. But we're currently doing some work, or will be doing some work, I should say, with the Cricketer, which is the UK digital and print outlet. So yeah, we'll be doing some work with them over the coming months as well.
Okay, we'll just want an introduction from you, Major, and how you got into cricket, and how's the Caribbean cricket been progress, and where are you from actually in the from the Caribbean as well. Some insights of you.
I mean, a quick brief one. So I was born in Jamaica, and um, grew up primarily in the UK, with different years spent probably going back to Jamaica every year of my life, and then going back there to do some of my schooling as well. So I effectively I've got dual heritage, dual citizenship, but I would consider myself Jamaican first and foremost. Obviously my family, all my extended and immediate family, all live in Jamaica or the United States. But in terms of the podcast itself, myself and the co-host of the podcast, Santoki Nagilendran, we set it up about 2 years ago around this point, just before a few months before COVID came. And we set it up because we just felt that this side of the Atlantic, away from the Caribbean, there weren't many voices speaking about West Indies cricket. And in order to kind of redress the balance so that people could hear some what I call up-to-date voices about West Indies cricket, and also hear what the diaspora believes and thinks about West Indies cricket. It was about basically filling that gap and providing a medium for those of us who are outside of the Caribbean but have a deep love for West Indies cricket to be able to keep up to speed with what's going on, you know?
Yeah. And we have to talk. Thank you for that introduction as well. And we have to talk about how West Indies performed in the 2020 World Cup. First of all, only winning one match, and I think they lost to Sri Lanka also. And expected much more from Windies, especially the first match, getting all out for 55 against England in that match. And why has West Indies struggled against spin mostly, and why hasn't the senior players contributed that much? Especially we thought Pollard, Gale, DJ Bravo, Andre Russell, mentioned a few. They haven't stepped up in the 2020 World Cup recently. So thoughts on Windies performances in the 2020 World Cup? Yeah.
I, where to start? That's the problem when trying to dissect a campaign like that. When you go
Yeah.
in as one of the fancied teams, and you collapse in pretty much every single game. I mean, we beat Bangladesh, but that doesn't mean anything because Bangladesh were awful.
Yeah.
There's lots of reasons. I think there's lots of reasons ultimately,
Mm.
and I'll just list four straight off the top of my head.
Yeah. Sure.
Our preparation for the tournament was basically 9 games in the summer against South Africa and Australia. We didn't pick a team that we basically picked a team that relied on the fact that they were all greats of the game in some shape or form and just hoped it would all come together. Yes, there's been lots of discussion and consternation back home in the Caribbean about who should have gone, who shouldn't have gone. But the reality is, if I take Chris Gale for example, if you have a choice between picking Chris Gale or Shandapur Hemraj, you're going to pick Chris Gale. And that shouldn't require too much discussion. But the reality is, too many of those senior players just didn't have any form during the tournament. And that means Gale, that means Lendl Simmons, that means Andre Russell, that means Kyron Pollard. Who else am I missing here? Even DJ Bravo.
DJ Bravo,
And then the youngsters, like your Hetmeyer and the Purans and the Lewises, they had some scores, but they weren't consistent through the tournament either. So in essence, and the bowling was subpar. So when you put all of that together, it's probably unsurprising that we didn't do that well. And what I've had to kind of say to a lot of West Indian fans is that wouldn't have been solved by one or two changes in the team. When so many players underperform in a tournament, you can't solve that with one or two quick fixes, because it's just the team didn't play well. It wasn't one player, the team in general didn't play very well. So it was disappointing. There'll be a lot of soul searching. And as with Sri Lanka, we have another tournament, a year from now? So there isn't a lot of time to mourn about what happened. What's done is done. Those players won us two T20 tournaments and two T20 titles. So we thank them for their service. Most of them will no longer play for the West Indies. And we see, much like with what Sri Lanka did in the World Cup, it's now probably time to blood a whole bunch of new players who world cricket didn't really know about, and see what they can do on the world stage.
And also about the preparations for next year. I mean, West Indies for the first time they'll have to face a qualifiers ahead of the 2022 World Cup. So thoughts now that now we know that DJ Bravo retired, Chris Gale probably won't play another World Cup, and the captains. Do you think that Pollard might be changed for next year? And whether Hetmeyer or Pooran might captain West Indies next year, perhaps for the 2020 World Cup. So will there be changes in the setup for West Indies for next year for the 2020 World Cup? Talking about the qualifiers and of the World Cup ahead as well. Yeah.
In the short answer is no. I don't see that happening. I don't think it should happen. Will Pollard have to face some questions? Yes. But as a captain, if so many of your players don't show up and don't perform in a tournament, how much can that be blamed on just one person? So the other thing to consider as well is that, as you said, with Bravo going, Gale going, there's question marks about whether Dre Russ will play next year's World Cup. Lendl Simmons is going. Do you really want to give a young player the captaincy with pretty much no experienced players around them? Pollard's basically going to be the only genuine experienced player left in that squad, right? Okay, take maybe a Jason Holder, but Pollard's going to be the only 2020 experienced player in the squad. I would say that the right thing to do is you let Pollard, because it's only 1 year away, you let Pollard take them into the next World Cup, with the idea being that as soon as it is done, he hands over to what will likely be Pooran to captain the side. But I think you would be asking a lot of Nicholas Pooran to take the captaincy now, knowing that we're about to bring through a whole heap of new players, and then expect him to somehow gel that squad ready for the qualifiers in a year's time. I don't think you should do that to any young player. Particularly as well, when Pooran and Hetmeyer would probably say that they aren't as consistent as they want to be. So why would you burden them with the captaincy as well? So I just don't see it happening. I see Pollard leading the side and then handing it over after 2022.
Machel, I've got to ask this for sure on Sunil Narayan. Why wasn't he brought, not even considered even in the 2020 World Cup after having impressive CPL and especially in IPL with KKR? And also Shea Hope, he was another batsman who I'm also questioning why he wasn't. He also brought in for the 2020 World Cup squad. And also Jason Holder initially wasn't brought in. He was brought in as an injury replacement. I'm not sure of the player, but he was brought in as an injury replacement. So thoughts on these three players, especially on Sunil Narayan. Is there a conflict between Pollard and Narayan, or is there some politics going on with the Windies board and Narayan's? Questions on that,
So
because so many people have asked about this,
yeah,
and Sunil
let me
Narayan
try
not been brought in.
let me clear this one up. So Sunil should okay. Let's deal with Sunil first. Should Sunil have been in the World Cup squad? Yes. Would I have taken Sunil? Yes. If Sunil had said he was available 10 seconds before the first game, I would have picked Sunil. However, in the West Indies setup, there is a because there's a Sri Lankan player who's fallen. What's the name of the player in Sri Lanka that I'm thinking of? Surnames begins with G. You had a guy in Sri Lanka whose name I can't remember. Is it Sri Lanka? Who's failed some fitness tests in the past, and he's gone on social media. Is it the Sri Lankan player who went on
Banu Rajapaksa.
he went on like Instagram to prove that he was fit, and I can't remember if it's that
I
player I'm
think
thinking
it's
of.
Banuka. I think it's Banuka, but he
So
was picked for the 2020 World Cup. Yeah.
right, so the West Indies have implemented for a while. So we're going back like 3 years now. A fitness test policy, because basically they had worked out that fitness standards in the Caribbean were shocking. Now, do you need to be fit to be a good cricketer? Well, I'll leave that to people who watch this to decide, right? But Cricket West Indies had said that every player in the Caribbean has to reach a base level of fitness on various different criteria. Now, with Sunil, his issue was that Sunil, well, there's two question marks that we're trying to find the answers to. Either Sunil didn't make himself available to take the fitness test, which therefore rules him out of selection, or he took the fitness test and failed it. But either way, whatever happened with Sunil, he did not pass a fitness test. Whichever one of those two is the real answer, he did not pass a fitness test, whether he took it or whether he didn't take it. Now, what Cricket West Indies then had to weigh up is this. Do you make an exception for Sunil Narayan because he's a world-class player? I would have done, but if you do that, you are setting a very dangerous precedent for what you do moving forward with all selections. Are you then saying to every player in the Caribbean, as long as you're world-class, actually our standards don't matter and our criteria don't matter, and just as long as you're good? And I think that they've gone for the greater good here, which is to say, well, actually, everyone's got to pass the test. Even if you're Sunil Narayan, you've got to pass the test. Because that was the same reason why Shafane Rutherford didn't make the squad. And I would have had him in my squad. But again, the same argument was made. He either didn't take the test or he didn't pass the test. So therefore, he couldn't get in the squad. So the issue here isn't whether Sunil Narayan was picked. The issue is the fitness test, is that fit for purpose? Is that fitness test preventing West Indies picking their best team? And do they need to rejig it? Or do we look at the players and say they aren't being serious in thinking that they can just walk into an international side whenever they see fit, irrespective of a test? But that, like I say, that's for Cricket West Indies to look at. And that's also for the fans to decide where they stand on which side of the line. In terms of players like Jason Holder, that's where you have to criticize the selection committee. They decided, I can't speak for them, but this is what I think happened. Yeah. They decided that Ravi Rampal would be a better bowler in the power play than Jason Holder would be. And also O'Shane Thomas got picked in the squad because O'Shane Thomas offered express pace, which Jason Holder can't offer. But the question they need to ask themselves with the World Cup done and dusted, O'Shane Thomas played 0 games. If you knew or thought you weren't necessarily going to play O'Shane Thomas, why did you leave Jason Holder out then? I could understand the rationale for including O'Shane Thomas and including Ravi Rampal, but if one of those players plays 0 games in the World Cup, Jason Holder should never have been a reserve then, because Jason Holder is a player that would always be under consideration for selection if he's in a squad. So I think the selection committee rightly have to answer some questions about whether they were right to initially leave Jason Holder out. But that said, Holder did come in and he played 3 games. So it wasn't like he missed a large majority of the World Cup. And even when he came in, we still weren't that good. So that's why I'm saying it's bigger than just 1 or 2 players. I think there was a bigger issue than just, was it 1 player here? Was it 2 players there? The whole team didn't play well.
Yeah. Satwik, you have any questions to ask to Machel?
Yes. I had a question. Was were Ravi Rampal and O'Shane Thomas particularly fit to play? Because the weight they carry is uh, is a concern in itself.
Hmm.
And seeing what Nicholas Puran showed his form in this year's CPL, I was a bit of a concern because I'm a Guyana Amazon Warriors fan, so I
Hmm.
know how crucial Nicholas Puran form is. So, opinion on it.
So with the first point about Ravi and O'Shane, so I can't confirm this, so do not take my words as the gospel on this. But there have been questions raised about if O'Shane Thomas was match ready. Now we have to remember though that O'Shane Thomas was with the Rajasthan Royals in IPL. He didn't play any games, but he was with them. So he must have been some level of fit for Rajasthan to pick him up. But I can see your issues and concerns raised whether O'Shane was actually match fit or not. Now Ravi carries weight. He always has done for his whole career. Ravi Rampal has always carried a bit of weight. But with Ravi was the top wicket taker in CPL. Now my thing is this, and let's look at it in terms of the LPL, Lankan Premier League. What do you do then if somebody performs in your domestic tournament, which you recognize as your T20 tournament, and they're the top wicket taker? What are we saying if we don't pick that person? Then what does that say about the standards? Now, what I would argue is this: if we're saying that Ravi Rampal was carrying a bit of timber and looked a bit unfit, what's that say about our standards that he was the top wicket taker then in the domestic tournament? All the same. Now, I do know that Ravi has a medical exemption. So when he took the fitness test, like Chris Gale has one as well, where if they have a long-standing fitness issue, so Ravi's is shin splits, I believe, or it may be a shin splits or a back issue, which gives him a special medical exemption. So his fitness standards don't have, if like, say like Purans are up here. Ravi only has to meet one here because he has a medical form that gives him an exemption. But that said, you are right. People look at somebody like a Ravi Rampal and say, "Hold on a minute, how match fit is a Ravi Rampal?" But like I say, 19 wickets in CPL.
Yeah. And also, Mitchell, I have to speak about Dominic Drakes. He was one, I thought that he might be even picked in the test squad coming up against Sri Lanka. And he surprisingly did really well in the CPL for Trinidad.
Saint
Um,
Kitts.
uh,
Same
yeah,
kits.
Saint Kitts and Nevis Patriots. Yeah. So thoughts on Drakes? I mean, he was a net bowler for CSK. I mean, in the IPL, if I'm not mistaken. Why
Mm.
wasn't
Yes,
he
yes.
picked? I mean, as a young player, as an all rounder, why do you have any ideas on why wasn't he picked for the 2020? I mean, squad for the 2020 World Cup, and could have been picked even for the tests coming up against Sri Lanka. And we know that he's a young prospect, so that's why we are asking you. And we
Mm.
have no idea on why Drakes is not in the setup right now, being 26 or 27 right now. I mean, his age, yeah. So talk
So
about
so so
Dominic Drakes, yeah.
with Drake's, I think he's actually 24, 25 now. But with Drake's, do you, and I say this for all of the West Indian players who are sub 25. What they haven't done is shown consistent performance. So Drake's was good in this year's CPL, right? But if you go back to 2020 CPL, not so much. 2019 CPL, not so much. And the
Yeah.
question that I think the selectors would have had is how much do you pick a player based on just this one CPL tournament? And it's a risk. It's a big risk to do it just based off one tournament. At that point in time, Drake's had not picked up lots of international franchise contracts. He wasn't playing in LPL. He wasn't playing in IPL. He wasn't playing in PSL. He wasn't playing in T20 Blast. So do you just go off CPL alone and say, right, that one good season you've had means you get into a World Cup squad? And they've gone with no. That said, after the Sri Lanka series is over, West Indies go immediately to play Pakistan. in some limited overs cricket. I will be shocked if Dominic isn't in the squad for that tour to Pakistan, because I think he'll be in this wave of young players now who replace the outgoing legends in T20 cricket. But in terms of in terms of red ball cricket and why he's not in the test squad, believe it or not, he doesn't play enough red ball cricket. And this is the other issue we have to raise that West Indies have. I don't know if it's so much an issue for Sri Lanka at the moment, but it could well be in the future. In fact, actually, look at Hasaranga. Actually, we can use Hasaranga, right? So Hasaranga is now going to be a global T20 star. Whether Sri Lankan fans like it or not, he's now about to be a global T20 star. Yeah. Is that going to be at the cost of him ever playing red ball cricket for Sri Lanka? Quite possibly. And this is the risk that the smaller teams like us, West Indies, and you, Sri Lanka, have in the global game. If our players make a name for themselves in T20 cricket, it diminishes the chances of them first playing domestic red ball cricket. And if they're not playing domestic red ball cricket, how do they then get into the test team? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
so Dominic Drake doesn't play enough red ball cricket. And if he got that CSK IPL contract, he's currently in Dubai playing the T10s. Don't be surprised now if he gets picked up in PSL and he gets picked up in BPL. And then when those tournaments are happening, we're supposed to be playing red ball cricket domestically. So it's a catch-22 situation.
Yeah. And we have to talk about the West Indies test squad right now. And I think there are questions asked from the audience also about Jeremy Solozzano. Yes, from Smayan. Yeah. He's been picked, and why has he been picked, and what is special in him? Because I think he's a new name. Yes, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So thoughts on Jeremy Solozzano and why he's been picked for this test squad, and what's special with him, and also with Pamal also I think we discussed, but let's talk about Jeremy Solozzano first. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what to say. So Jeremy Solozzano averages 23 in first class cricket. And I'm laughing because I don't know what to say to you. I really don't know what to say. It might be 24, you know. No, it's 23. It's 23.
23, yes, you're right.
Now, what do I possibly say about this? Jeremy Solozzano is actually a talented cricketer, okay? If we're talking about raw talent, he does have ability. Has he shown that through his career? Of course not, because why else would you average 23 in first class cricket? Now, as you can see in the kind of stats you've just brought up there, you'll notice that the last time he would have played first class cricket was in 2020 because COVID has ended our domestic game in the Caribbean. Nobody in the Caribbean has played domestic first red ball cricket in coming up to 2 years now, because none of the islands and countries, the chief medical officers, haven't allowed it to take place. The traveling between islands isn't as free as it can be, so we can't logistically get a first class tournament on. The next time we believe we're going to get red ball cricket in the Caribbean is February in 2022. So that's, as you've got on the ESPN screen, there is no data to show you about what he's been doing recently because there's no cricket, right? So why did they pick him? They picked him because, and it's not on the screen, but in 2019, India A toured West Indies, and Solozzano played very well against them. I think he hit a couple of 50s, got a 92. That will be the India A tour where players like was it like Shubman Gill, all the next kind of gen of Indian talent who are currently in the team were all on that India A tour. And Solozzano stood out as an opener against India A. And the problem since then has been that every opener that West Indies have tried alongside Craig Brathwaite has failed. John Campbell failed.
He's another name that hasn't been included in the...
he's not been included, because he got given his try, didn't succeed. Shane Mosley got given a try in Bangladesh, didn't succeed. Kieran Powell came back versus South Africa and Pakistan, didn't succeed. So really and truly, I think they've rummaged around in the bag and said, well, who's next that we can try? And the guy that's come out of the bag is Solozzano. Now, we played 2 trial games in Antigua before flying out to Sri Lanka at the start of the month. And
Okay.
so it was like 24 players, the best 24 players in the Caribbean in 2 teams, or 22. Solozzano opened for one of them, and he scored, I think, a 70, and it might have been a 40 or a 50. So based on the trial games, they've basically picked him and said, go to Sri Lanka. Now, if I was going to debut a young guy who only averages 23 in first-class cricket, actually Sri Lanka might be one of the best places to debut them, rather than debuting against England, New Zealand. With all due respect to Sri Lanka, if like say like the track is flat in Galle, actually that might be the best place for you to get your test debut. And say we bat first tomorrow, then that might be the best place to get a test debut and get some confidence and believe that you can score some test runs. So basically, it's a gamble. It's a big gamble, and they're hoping that he has raw talent that will just somehow show itself in the international stage. But it's a huge gamble.
Yeah. And we want to take another comment over here from Smayan, a valuable question over here. He's asked also, what if Kyle Mayers does not perform that well in Sri Lanka? Who is an alternative for Kyle Mayers? Yeah, I think he's been struggling as well. I think in the test series before this, I mean, against Sri Lanka, and he's been picked. I mean, he's done well in 1 or 2 test matches. But yeah, thoughts on Kyle Mayers, Machel? Yeah.
So, I mean, do you know what? Funny enough, my thoughts on Mayers depends on what you both say about how you think Sri Lanka will line up tomorrow, right? And let me explain. So, on our YouTube channel, we did a video about who we think will be the likely starting 11 for the game tomorrow. And we believe that it's between Carl Mayers and Roston Chase for the final position in the squad. And what that will depend on is whether West Indies want to go in with 2 spinners plus Roston as like Roston's not part-time. He's slightly better than part-time, but like a third spinner. So Rakeem Cornwall off spin, Jamel Warrican the left arm bowler, and then Roston as the third spin option. But they may say, we don't want the third option as a spin. We want the third seamer. Because if we're picking our 2 spinners, it means our 2 medium fast bowlers would likely be Kimar Roach, Jason Holder, and then the third one would be Carl Mayers. So really and truly, we don't know. We think that they're going to have to decide, do they go with the third option being spin, or the third option, or what am I saying third? 5th option, sorry. So do they go with the 5th option being spin, or the 5th option being pace? So it's between Mayers and Roston Chase, but not because of what they do with the bat, because of what they offer with the all-round capacity. So I'm intrigued from a Sri Lankan perspective, because I don't know how Sri Lanka will line up. So I don't know if Sri Lanka go into their team with the. I don't know if the Sri Lankan selection tomorrow is 3 spinners, 2 pacers, or are they going to be 3 pacers, 2 spinners? And
I think it will be 3 spinners. I think because of the God pitch, usually
exactly. So if Sri Lanka are going with 3 spinners, you would assume West Indies should copy and go with 3 spinners and 2 pacers as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's playing to our strengths. Do you see where I'm coming from? So for me, it's between Mayers and Chase, and what that means is we think that Shea Hope will come back into the side and bat at number 4 tomorrow.
I had a question.
Satwik, you can ask questions.
So Roston Chase, after playing CPL 2020 and 21, and he succeeded so well in the T20 format, is it the end of Roston Chase, the test match player? Do you think so?
Good question. Good question. And do you know what? I'm going to get an interview with Roston, and I'm going to have to come back to you on that one, because that's going to be really interesting. And actually, your question, I think, applies to Jason Holder as well, because Jason has made no bones about the fact that he now would like to get some T20 contracts around the world. I'm not saying that means he won't play for West Indies test team. Of course, he's one of the best all-rounders in the world. So Jason, of course, will play red ball cricket. But the more you play T20 cricket, what impact does that have on your test aspirations? Roston isn't a certainty in our test side and hasn't been now for probably the last year. And now he's started to make some inroads. So Roston has had 2 good CPLs in a row, now gone to the World Cup. I am expecting Roston Chase to now get franchise offers in other competitions. And it's going to be very, very interesting if that happens. How does that impact on his red ball game? Because at the end of the day, Roston does have 5 test centuries. He's a very good player of spin. I would love to believe that Roston still has unfinished business in Test cricket because his average has fallen to 28 now, and he shouldn't be a player with a Test match average of 28. But his standards have dropped. He has not been good in the last 2 years with the bat in Test cricket. So I would like to see him kind of knuckle down and try to re-cement his place in the Test team. And again, Sri Lanka would be a good place to start for that if he gets in the side.
Yeah. Rohan here asks how's weather in Galle may decide the amount of seamers. I think the weather in Galle, I think today it should be sunny. Here in Colombo it's sunny, but you never know. It's the monsoon here as well in November, so you never know. I think in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, that series against West Indies, rain interrupted. It was 11 years ago. Chris Gale scored a triple century.
3-3-3.
3-3-3. They are brilliant innings from Chris Gale. 11 years ago, rain interrupted a lot, and I think it happened in November as well. So rain could be definitely a decisive factor in this 2 test match series. Wrong month, I would say that Test cricket should is been scheduled, but hopefully it becomes sunny. Right now, I think it's okay in Galle right now, but yeah, you never know about the weather. 5 match Test series, yes, but I want to talk. Machel, I want to talk about Jaden Seals. I think he was picked in the LPL, and he's a very exciting prospect. I think he's 20 years. He's in this Test squad. I'm not sure whether he'll get a chance this 2 Test match series, but yeah, thoughts on Jaden Seals because he's an upcoming name. And also, I'm surprised why Hayden Walsh Jr. is not being picked in this Test squad. A spinner who could have played in Test cricket and I think he only played 2 matches in the 2020 World Cup, if I'm not mistaken. And everyone thought that Hayden Walsh Jr. will get more opportunities in this 2020 World Cup in UAE. So, thoughts on both of these players? Yeah.
So, firstly, before I start on that, let me just say I hope it rains for all of the Test match. Let's be honest, Sri Lanka are favourites. So I'd like to see some rain so that we can share the points, and that will help West Indies in the World Test Championship. So I do hope it actually rains. But I think if we get 5 days of Test cricket in Sri Lanka will likely win. I don't see West Indies winning if we get all 5 days. But in terms of Jaden Seals, listen, I'm very excited by Jaden Seals. It's I mean, he's just turned 20, but the level of control, it's not so much the pace. The pace is fantastic, but the level of control that he bowls with is very, very impressive to see. He shouldn't be that good at 20. And jump straight into international cricket and clearly be able to control his lengths, accuracy. We'll see. I'm not sure he'll play, by the way, in this Test series. I'm not convinced he'll get a game. But what has been interesting in the games versus South Africa and Pakistan is, on average, in his overs, you're shocked if you see even one loose ball. And that's very impressive to see from a 20-year-old who's just starting to make his way in the game. And the reason why I don't think it's the end of the world if he doesn't play in the Test series is because, as you rightly pointed out, he's been picked up in the LPL. So actually, he's going to get his experience in Sri Lankan conditions anyway in the LPL. So for his development, it's not necessarily the be-all and end-all that he must play in Sri Lanka. I think they should look wider and think, okay, he's got his LPL contract. he will get some games on this tour, and it's quite all right for him to basically play as a net bowler. For our batsmen primarily, because I also don't see Shannon Gabriel playing. So this isn't about whether Jaden Seales should or shouldn't play. I just think that because of Sri Lanka and because of spin being more dominant, you don't go in with 3 out and out pacers. So I think they're picking. Holder obviously has to play. So then you're picking one from Roach, Gabriel, or Seals more than likely, and you'd have to think that you're not going to go with the inexperienced guy, no matter how good he is, against away from home. You're gonna have to err towards going towards your experienced bowlers. So that means it's got to be Roach or Gabriel. You said someone else after Seals. Let's go now.
I think Hayden Walsh Jr.
Oh, Hayden. Yeah, so with Hayden, again, Hayden wants to play Test cricket and he's made that clear. But again, this goes back to the point I was saying earlier on. Until we get some red ball cricket back in the region, and he needs to basically play some red ball to stake a claim. And until that happens, I just don't see him getting a chance.
Patrick, you have any more questions to ask? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you can ask.
One is Jermaine Blackwood has been a decent batsman in Test match cricket for West Indies. He scored 92 when West Indies toured Sri Lanka back in 2015 at Galle. I think so. Yes, at Galle, and he scored 95 in England as well last year. And took some suggestions from Virat Kohli as well. So, what do you look on to his career, Test match career?
I really like Jermaine Blackwood. I really think there is a place in the team for a player like Jermaine Blackwood, because what Blackwood does. Sorry, no. There's okay. Let me start again. There's 2 Jermaine Blackwoods. There's the Jermaine Blackwood who would have toured Sri Lanka back in 2015, 2016, and actually, I think he was probably our second best batsman on that tour in terms of averages. Jermaine Blackwood is basically always good on a Test series for about an average of 30 minimum. That's like his base standard. And the reason why Jermaine has been dropped so many times in the past is because he sometimes gives his wicket away, because he's a counter-attacking batsman. So if West Indies are, let's say, 100 for 4, Jermaine Blackwood's not the player who's necessarily going to dig in all the time. He's the player who's going to go, we're under pressure, so let me try and hit out and put the pressure back on the bowlers. And I actually believe that every Test team needs a batsman like that. You can't get stuck in a rut of everyone saying, I'm just out here to survive. And Jermaine has always put a lot on his ability to counter-attack. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the problem with a counter-attacking batsman is when it doesn't work, you're often the first person to get blamed, even though he's technically playing his role in the side. Now, Monty Desai, who is our batting coach, he was on the podcast this week. And what Monty Desai said is that they don't ever want to take that away from Jermaine. Like that level of that's important for the team. What they've been trying to teach Jermaine about and what they believe Jermaine is getting better at is you can do that, but also play that innings over 100 balls rather than, I don't know, let's say a quick fire 30 off 37 balls and then you're out. They're more like bat 100 balls, Jermaine, and because of the way you play, if you bat 100 balls, you're likely to make at least 65 to 70 runs because of the nature of how he plays. So they're just trying to shift how he plays from still play your way of cricket, but first focus on bat 100 balls, and then you will naturally make runs. So I like him. He sometimes looks a bit loose and a bit reckless, but it's important to have a player that doesn't just go into their shell every time they come out to the crease.
Yeah. So I brought in Aryan here also, who wants to ask questions. And here's Sunil Kumar Singh. Here says Blackwood is not a proper batsman and less merit. Would you want to contradict his comments over here? Yeah. Machel, yes.
You want me to continue with that? Listen, even if I agreed with that, the thing is, the whole West Indies batting lineup is weak. So,
Mm.
so you also have to put that in the context of we don't have a strong batting lineup in general. If you take the averages for
Yeah.
our tops, like Jason Holder is probably our best batsman, and he bats number 7. If we're going to talk realistically, and you're talking about who actually looks good, if we're going to say what a proper batsman is, Jason Holder does.
Maybe
But
Shea
he has
Hope.
to, yeah, with Hope, but then Hope hasn't proved it consistently. Whereas
Yes, yes.
Holder at least consistently can put a string of runs together. But in any other Test team, Jason
Yeah.
Holder would probably bat at number 6 as the all-rounder because he would have good enough players around him to allow him to bat at number 6. For West Indies, he has to bat 7 or 8 to basically offer lower order what word am I looking for? Lower order
Yes, it is.
stability for when we collapse. If that makes any sense. So
Yeah.
we can criticize Blackwood, but the whole batting lineup could be criticized if you really want to look at it that way.
And I think Jason Holt, the number 1 Test all round as well right now, and has proven, I think, 2019 series in West
Yeah.
Indies against
In
England,
home
a
series.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a brilliant series, scoring a double century. And yeah,
Uh-huh.
Arun, you can ask questions also to Machel, yeah, if you have any. Yeah,
Hi, Machel. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Did
No,
I
you're
did
good,
I
man. You're good.
pronounce it? Yeah, and just coming to your point about Blackfoot, I think Pawan, if you can just bring that comment up once again,
yeah, sure.
which Mr. Sunil asked, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I think when we talk now, you can remove it. Thank you.
yeah,
So
sure.
when he said not on merit, I think he was going into the technical aspect because whenever the name Test cricket comes up, people go into the technical aspect that this batsman is not technically correct. He doesn't defend a lot of balls. But if we see a lot of teams, India have got Rishabh Pant. Okay,
Mm.
England at some point had Josh Butler down the order to come, and this trend was basically started by someone like Adam Gilchrist back in the early 2000s, where he comes down as a wicketkeeper or an aggressive batsman just to push that net run rate up and put the pressure on the opposition. So I think Jermaine Blackwood is the that kind of X factor, if you want to call him that, in the West Indian lineup. And my question to you, Michael, was that Craig Brathwaite. Um, these are foreign conditions for the West Indian batsmen, and they are still a building side. That win in Bangladesh was fantastic, but how does he bring this team up in this World Test Championship cycle? Taking the responsibility of getting the runs. How do you see his captaincy? Coming up in this tour in spin friendly conditions, especially in Sri Lanka. Yeah.
Yeah, and do you know what? That's a really good question because actually, one of the things that has been or not written about enough this year is because people have to remember that the other thing about that Bangladesh tour at the top of the year was that Jason obviously lost the captaincy,
Yeah.
which I mean I had seen that coming, but it did cause a lot of shock at the time. So lots of the players pulled out. Craig took the side. They obviously historic Test win in Bangladesh. And then they passed the captaincy to Craig full time. And I have seen this year a renewed energy about the West Indies Test side. And
Exactly.
actually, so this year our record reads 2-0 win away in Bangladesh, 0-0 at home versus Sri Lanka. I mean, that Test series was basically played on flat tracks, but still 0-0, 0-0 versus Sri Lanka.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Lost 2-0 at home to South Africa, where basically pace dominated, and it was about which side had the better batting lineup, and South Africa did. 1-1 at home versus Pakistan, which again features another historic win when they don't know if any of you saw it, when the last 3 wickets chased down the 147 and we
yeah, I remember.
etc etc.
Yeah, that was a great win. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
magnificent
By
Test
one
match.
wicket. Yeah,
So in the grand scheme of recent West Indies Test history, where generally speaking we always lose, we've actually had a relatively
Yeah.
strong year
Mhm.
in international in red ball cricket, and part of that has to
yes,
be about the camaraderie that Craig has managed to foster in the dressing room. This week, I've attended a few of the press conferences, Jermaine Blackwood, Craig himself, Jaden Seals. And all of them said the same thing, that dressing room spirit is good. We want to end this year on a high. We think we've played some really good test cricket this year. And every journalist kept saying, you've never won a test match in Sri Lanka, which also people forget that we actually have never won.
Yeah.
But Craig and Jermaine in particular were like, we're not coming here to just try and draw a test series. We're actually coming here to try to win for the first time in Sri Lanka. And
yeah,
that was good to hear. Obviously, you can say, well, they're just saying what they have to say as captain and vice captain. But there was a certain energy I was picking up where it's like, they actually believe that they can come to Sri Lanka and win a test match. I mean, I don't, but they actually, they believe they can. So I think, and then in terms of answering your thing about the role Craig plays, the other thing that will be interesting with Craig in Sri Lanka is recently what I've seen from Craig is more intent at the top of the order. The first 10 years or so of Craig's international career are generally about Craig facing loads and loads of balls. Like he's our durable batsman. He's
he's like your Pujara.
Yes, exactly.
He's like your Pujara.
Yeah, he's the one batsman we've got where if he knows, in fact, I think we saw it in the Sri Lanka series at home. He knows, you know what? I don't have to score quickly. I'm going to bat for 270 balls, and if I've only got 67 at the end of that, so be it. But someone in this innings has to be an anchor for everybody else to bat around. Once Craig gets in, teams should always be afraid because his mindset allows him to bat long and bat deep. But all that said, what I have seen him do more this year is also he's shown that he's got more than just a punch down the ground or something like that. He's shown a bit more intent in terms of the array of shots that he's played. And as so often happens, I guess, with some players in cricket, captaincy brings out a different side to that player. And I think we've probably seen that. We've probably seen that with Craig this year.
Yeah. West Indies have had a good... Yeah,
I had a question.
Yes,
Shane Dowrich. Shane Dowrich, from the period of 2017 to 2019, was the second best West Indies batsman after Jace Holder.
Yep.
In 2020 New Zealand tour, he pulled out due to some personal reasons. And since then, we haven't seen him and seen Joshua De Silva playing regular Test match cricket. So, what is the reason for Shane Dowrich being dropped from the Test side after being a crucial cog in the team?
Very good question, and I have to tread carefully with this one. So, all I can say to you and those who are listening is currently we believe there is some kind of legal case going on with Shane Dowrich from Cricket West Indies. So all I can tell you is what's in the public sphere, and I can't do too much speculation. But as I understand it, this is the case. Shane went home from New Zealand, as you correctly point out, with some kind of personal issue, medical, possibly related, but I don't want to speculate on what that may or may not have been. Since then, Shane has basically not played any cricket. Now, in June/July every year, West Indies, Cricket West Indies, look at their central contracts. And so they looked at their central contracts and they decided who was keeping a contract, who was getting a white ball contract, who was getting an all format contract, so on and so forth. Dowrich lost his contract. The reason he lost his contract is, well, he hadn't played any cricket. He got injured in England in the post-COVID series, went to New Zealand, went home, didn't play in Bangladesh, didn't play at home versus Sri Lanka. So when the new contracts came out, he lost his contract because he hasn't played in. You can't renew a test. You can't renew a central contract when the person's not played any cricket. Well, that was what West Indies said. As I now understand it, Shane Dowrich and his representatives have taken out some kind of grievance against West Indies for loss of earnings. And I tread carefully. I believe that the crux of the argument is that they are saying because he went home with a personal circumstance. They should have
Mm.
taken that into consideration before dropping him from his contract, and therefore he's lost earnings. They need to reimburse. That's my understanding of the situation.
Oh,
Now, the
yeah.
thing is this: all the while that is going on, he can. I assume he can't come back to West Indies cricket, because if you're taking out a grievance against your employer, I don't think you're going to get into. I don't think you're going to
Yeah,
get into your team
actually,
at
yeah.
the time.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
This,
so, so
I
we have to wait for that to finish.
Yeah, I did hear some speculations about what you just mentioned. I just read an article, I don't know how long ago, but Dowrich was, as he pointed out, involved in something back
Mm,
home. And now, thank you for clearing that, because De Silva also, he hasn't done that bad, right?
mm.
From what
He's been
I've
all right.
seen, he's been all right for the West Indies. And I think this series, like you mentioned, motivation for them to beat Sri Lanka for the first time. I think we beat Australia at the Gabba in over 32 years, right?
Mm,
So a team can use that as a motivation and really step up their performance a notch. I think that
mm,
is what West Indies can do. And from the videos I've seen online of their training camps, of the pep talks they had just before the net session a couple of days ago, they're looking sorted. They're looking ready with the few plans that they need. They're practicing the sweep shots, which are very essential in the spin conditions. So they're on the right path, and I hope they do well this time, because as a cricket fan over the years, I've sorry to say this, but I'm sad that this West Indies, the legendary West Indies side, which we used to see. I mean, I wasn't born then, but the stories I've heard, just I want to see them come up. I want to see Pakistan. I want to see West Indies. I want to see Sri Lanka. All these low tier teams come up and challenge the likes of India, challenge the likes of England, so that the bridge that has been created in international cricket gets closed. And that's my hope for the future. And I don't know if it will come true, but yeah,
No,
that's
and,
what
and
it
and
is.
it's actually important that you say that, because actually we can't leave Sri Lanka out of this. Obviously, I'm giving the West Indian perspective, but this is actually an important series for Sri Lanka. Let's not forget
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Let's not
Yeah,
forget this. Like, as much as I'd
their
love West
first
Indies
matches, I
to
think, in the
exactly,
Test
yeah, and
Championship. Yeah,
you, I kind of feel like with Sri Lanka, they've come off a very positive T20. I mean, yeah, they didn't get through to the next round, but actually,
yeah,
if you're going to not make it to the next round in a T20 World Cup, at least do it in the way that Sri Lanka did it. At least look like you've got some new talent coming through, and look like you
Mhm.
can be competitive, and there's some new names to think about, and so on and so forth. So Sri Lanka technically are coming off a positive T20 World Cup. The only question mark I would raise about Sri Lanka is, obviously it's been announced this week that Mickey Arthur
yeah. He's going to
Mm.
leave
is
after
going to
the West
Derbyshire. So
Indies.
I just wonder what impact that
That
has
has,
with this
Yeah,
yeah.
being the
it's,
final series. Does that mean the players kind of take their foot off the pedal a tiny bit? Does that
Mhm.
mean it's not as intense because they kind of know he's moving on now? So it'll be interesting to just see the dynamic that plays out, knowing that basically this is the farewell to test for Mickey Arthur, and how that
Mm.
may or may not impact on things.
Yeah,
yeah, that's very
true.
true.
And just one point, Pawan, that
Yeah,
Michael mentioned. This was the last World Cup for Virat Kohli and Ravi Shastri. So, as Indian fans, and we also do the matches. I just realized that sometimes when it's the last match of a captain, of a coach, the teams do tend to just, as he mentioned, take their foot off the pedal a bit, and that does have an effect in the dressing room. We don't
Mm.
see it like in general on screen, but you can tell from the body language of the players, and many factors come in. So I hope that doesn't happen. I hope it's a well competitive series. We see the games go to last, and we see thrilling changes. Really looking forward to this series. Yeah, starting
yeah,
tomorrow.
Mitchell,
and
another question I had,
yeah. Go ahead.
not regarding this Test match series,
Mm.
regarding the upliftment of cricket in countries like USA and Canada, which West Indies did so well. So
Mm.
I think so in 2018 G20 Canada had a West Indies B side,
Yeah.
something like that. So upliftment of West Indies, was it a good is it a good initiative by the West Indies cricket to show other countries to empower these smaller countries to join cricket and show their power, like how West Indies promoted US cricket to host the 2024 World Cup?
Well, this is I
Just
don't.
about to come to that point or
I,
something.
this
Yeah.
this is a big one. This is a big one. I actually wonder if this isn't, rather than uplifting West Indies cricket, I actually wonder if this is going to go the other way.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
there is a part of me that just wonders. I'm going to be watching it very carefully over the next 5 to 10 years. There's a part of me that just wonders how many Caribbean players, as Canada and America, and particularly the United States, as they kind of take their cricket programs increasingly serious, or more serious, I should say, and pump more money into it, how many Caribbean players will see the United States as
As
another
not.
option?
Yeah.
Lots of them are
Yeah.
already playing. Because we've had no domestic cricket now for coming on 2 years, lots of them, in order to stay competitive in cricket, have been playing in the United States
Yes.
and getting paid that way. Now, how long before you start to see some players say, well, hold on, I can naturalize in the United States and actually represent them? We've had a few players. So the Narsingh Deonarayan, don't know if anybody remembers
Yes.
him,
No,
but
yeah,
Deonarayan was a player for us
Yeah.
back in like 2010, 11, 12, that kind
10,
of
11,
era.
yeah.
He's
Yeah.
now 37 and he has now put his hand in to play for the United States. Now, okay, he's at the back end of his career, but how long before you have a 27-year-old do that? Do you
Mm.
see what I
Not
mean? And say,
too.
well, actually,
Yeah, true.
I'm
Mm.
27,
Yeah.
and technically, although I should be seeing that West Indies as my future, I've got an easier pathway going through the States because they're also
Yes.
taking their cricket seriously. So I do just wonder
Fair
how
point.
much that's going to eat into. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be promoting United States cricket. We should do. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't be promoting Canadian cricket. We should do.
Mm.
But
yeah.
I'm just wondering what impact it's going to have in the long run.
Mm.
Mm.
Hayden Moss
Exactly.
Jr. also played for US
Exactly.
cricket.
Yeah.
So that actually did exactly what I'm talking about. Hayden felt that he couldn't progress in domestic cricket in the Caribbean, having played for the Leewards and then a bit for Barbados. He didn't feel he was making any headways. Went to the States, but admittedly, I think he had a passport through his father. I can't remember if that's the story.
Yeah.
Had represented the States, was about to go all in for the States, but then got a
Mm.
CPL contract and then came back the other way.
West Indies.
So
Yeah.
how many players do what Hayden Walsh did, sorry, and be like, well, maybe the States is
And
a
I
better
think,
option.
sorry to interrupt, I think Ali Khan is one, I think, a seamer to
Yeah.
watch out. I think he's playing in the CPL. Yeah, he currently
One
plays for
player, and then
US
you
cricket.
found it's, you guys remember Rusty Theron, right?
Yeah,
The
Yeah.
South
yeah.
African
from
fast
South
bowler.
Africa. Yes,
He's currently
Okay.
playing for the
Yeah.
US. He
Mm.
just
and
played for the
Xavier
US.
Marshall as well, right?
Yeah, Xavier Marshall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We Marshall. Yeah.
So my just one counter. Michelle, if what happens if CPL, CPL expands the amount of payment they're doing to their players
Mm.
and says, come to the West Indies, participate in the league, and we'll give you the opportunity to showcase your talent, okay, in our country. And would the players who are in the US, who are in the who are in Canada, get attracted by it and come to the West Indies, which in turn increases the amount of cricketers in the Caribbean? Is that an option? Expanding CPL,
Well,
you
so
know?
I've been saying I've been saying for a while now that CPL should be bigger than six. Is it six? Yeah, bigger than six teams.
Yeah.
I know that there's some logistics to think about. It's a lot of it's also to do with the travel within the Caribbean. It's not easy. It's not cheap. There isn't, so even before we look at Canada and the States, there should be another Caribbean team in the CPL. Remember, there isn't there used to be a team from Antigua, and there
Antigua,
isn't
Yeah.
now.
Hockey Phoenix,
There
I
should be a
remember.
team probably from Grenada, and there isn't.
Mm.
But then,
Yeah.
if you look wider than that, I've always wondered why they haven't had a US franchise team
Mm.
in CPL.
Yeah.
If you want, or maybe Canada might be too much of a stretch, but if you think
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
like let's say Florida, right? Going from Jamaica to Florida is effectively, or Miami is like a 1 hour flight. So to
Yeah.
me, I've always thought that why wouldn't you have a US franchise team? You can still have Caribbean players playing there, but to me, it's just a no-brainer. It's
Yeah.
not that far from the Caribbean. You base them in
Uh-huh.
Miami or Florida, sorry, and see how it goes. But obviously, with America now, with the states, sorry, now having their own major league, minor league, and
Mm.
investing a lot there, why would a United States franchise even want to take part in CPL? I would say yes, because CPL technically is the number 2 tournament. Technically, if we're looking at other metrics, if you don't look at the metrics of the standard of cricket and look at the other metrics like
Yeah.
Yeah.
global eyes on it and so on and so forth, CPL is probably number 2. So
Yeah.
I would be surprised if there wasn't an entrepreneur who wouldn't be pushing for a US-based franchise to take place.
Yeah.
To take part in an expanded CPL.
I think so. The one of the IPL teams or other franchises like even the Glazer family or the Manchester United would be interested in owning a CPL team. And I think so. Florida is a good option because CPL matches were hosted. I think
Exactly.
16 or
Yeah.
17 matches were hosted between 2016 to 18.
Jamaica Talawars were based in
Yes,
Florida for a
Jamaica
few years.
Talawars.
So it
Yes,
has a precedent. It has a precedent of a franchise playing there. So my argument is you could just set a franchise up there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, true. Because I think even West Indies tours, I think, also were in Florida, if I'm not
yes,
mistaken.
India
One
against
played.
India.
Yeah.
Against
India
India
yeah,
played.
twice.
against India, yeah.
Yeah, so
So
there's
So
definitely
the
a precedent.
the ideas are there. The ideas are there. I think it's just the implementation of how you're going to manage logistics and stuff. But I think the someone in the board might be thinking along those lines, just to increase, because West Indies is the hub of T20 cricket. Let's just say, if you want to just look at T20 cricket, West Indies is the hub. So I think it would really work as an idea. Yes.
I want to take this from the comment section here. Shankar, a valuable question here. Why is it that the Caribbean players give importance to franchise cricket than representing West Indies? A really good question here from Shankar. And we all know that certain players do tend to focus on franchise cricket in the last 10 years with him, Chris Gale, Andre Russell, ignoring the West Indies cricket board at times. Yeah. So, thoughts on that? Yeah, Mitchell, your thoughts on that question? Yeah.
So the quick way to answer that is from about 2010, let's say, to 2018, 19, with the explosion of IPL in the midst of all of that, 100% players preferred to play franchise cricket than represent West Indies. But that wasn't just the players' fault. A lot of that blame has to go on the board for not recognizing what T20 was going to become, not adapting quick enough, not finding a way to, so use a Chris Gale as an example, not finding a way to both accommodate T20 cricket and accommodate the players in red ball cricket at the same time. It didn't need to be what it became, which was an either or thing. 10 years later, I think the world game has now caught up with the idea that you can do both. I think we've finally reached a point where people realize you can do both, but you just have to adapt your cricket. You have to adapt your cricket calendar, and more importantly, you have to sit with the players and plot a way through. However, that notwithstanding, there is still a problem for West Indies going forward, and no more is this shown than in the case of Shimron Hetmeyer and Nicholas Puram. So the Chris Gale, Dre Russ, Pollard, Bravo, Narayan era, that era is over in so much as, I mean, they're all still going to play franchise cricket, but they're not in selection for West Indies as such.
Yes.
So that era is over. We now need to look at the next era of young players coming through and
Puran.
work out what are we going to do with them. Now, Nicholas Puran is 25 years old. Shimron Hetmeyer, I think, is 24. Nicholas Puran has
Yes,
played
2014.
0 test matches. 0. Hetmeyer hasn't played a test match since 2019. At this
Mm.
point in time, I would be shocked if Hetmeyer ever played a test match again. If Puran ever plays a test match, I would be shocked. I want them to, but here is the problem. Whenever our domestic Red Bull season is going on, there is always
I,
a T20 tournament going on somewhere. It used to be IPL, but this year we're going to have the domestic season in February. So IPL won't be going on then, but
yeah,
probably
Big Bash.
PSL will be, or Big
PSL
Bash,
will
or
be there.
something.
This time.
BPL, something's going to be going on. Now, my thing is this: I do not begrudge any player in the Caribbean wanting to earn a living. If they want to play 2020 cricket, make money, and look after their family and their future, so be it. Who are we to tell them to not do that? But the concern I have is this: who is sitting down with Puran and Hetmeyer and saying, let's try and make something work? So let's say, for example, when we're playing Red Bull cricket in February next year, Big Bash is going on. Already, somebody should be sitting with Hetmeyer and sitting with Puran and saying, if you are going to take a Big Bash contract, can you only play 3 games and then come back and play some of the domestic season so we at least can justify putting you into the test team? Do
Yeah.
you see? So
Same
the
with Evan
players,
Lewis as well.
the players, Evan Lewis is another example. The players
Mm.
have, because Evan Lewis, we talk about earlier on in the show. You said, why is Solozzano opening? Why isn't Evan Lewis in our test team? Do you know what I mean? But for that to happen, the players have to be able to meet the board halfway and accept that you can't just go play an entire tournament and think that we can pick you in a Red Bull side or test side. And also the board need to be willing to meet the players and say, okay, just come and play at least 3 games of the domestic season, just do something so that we can justify getting you into the testing. So it's improved, but actually it's not gone away. And again, if you think about it, you asked me about Dominic Drakes. He's another player. Shafane Rutherford, making waves all around the world for T20 cricket,
Playing
never
T10
played a
today.
test match. And T10, will he ever play a test match? Probably not. Will O'Shane Thomas ever play a test match? Probably not. So do you see, this isn't going away. This really isn't going away. Will Hasaranga ever play a test match again? Maybe not.
Maybe not.
So
Yeah. We had a long discussion on Hasaranga, if Pawan remembers, on this channel only. And I think we talk about format specific players in these COVID times and all that. I think West Indies actually what they have done is they have got certain players for test format, they've got certain for the T20 format, but the thing is they are informed batters who are actually scoring runs, be it any format, okay, are not the ones who play the whole circuit, like test, one day, and T20. Whereas if I take India, I know it's a not even a comparison right now, but just in terms of the players, KL Rahul, Rohit Sharma, just to name a few, and who are currently playing against New Zealand and who are your all format players who are guaranteed a spot in test, one day, and in T20 side. So, as you rightly said, Nicholas Puran, why can't he be your all format player?
yeah.
I don't know, except for Jason Holder, there was someone who played every format for a certain period of time, like when he was captain of the test team, or he was not even Carlos Brathwaite. I don't think he's ever played test
I
No,
don't.
cricket.
he's
Yeah,
not.
no, you're right. Holder is the only one. He's the only all format player.
Yeah.
And I had a
So
question that Ian Bishop and I have seen Ian Bishop and ESPN Cricket for both highlighting the fact that Andre Russell and Carlos Brathwaite not playing Test match cricket, and they had good numbers. I think so. Ian Bishop said this on commentary that Carlos Brathwaite had some good numbers in Test match cricket. So, what's your take on them playing Test match cricket? And another question is Nicholas Puran was included in the West Indies A side, where for the tour of New Zealand,
Yeah.
where players going to Bangladesh were included. So what after that? What was the plan by Cricket West Indies to promote Nicholas Pooran as a Test match batsman?
Right. So quickly with Brathwaite. So Brathwaite played the last time I think he played was in Australia. I think he hit a couple of 50s, looked all right. But then basically what happened is they pigeonholed him. They pigeonholed him as only being a white ball cricketer, so he just never got picked again. And again, that's not Carlos Brathwaite's fault. You have to look at the selectors to blame for that. Andre Russell, he played in that series when lots of the players pulled out. I think it was over a sponsorship issue. And again, they pigeonholed him, and that was the end of that. So a lot of that is about
2014.
selections, and yeah, it's about poor selections and this, that, and the other. But with Pooran, you're right. Pooran played in the 18 tour in New Zealand. I think he made a couple of 40s. I don't know if he hit
40s,
150. But
50s. He made
from
some
all
50s, I think.
yeah, from all the reports that I got from people who are out there, he looked good, as you would expect him to do, because he's a good player. He looked good, he looked solid, he looked compact. But the question mark that people then raised was: were two red ball games, two 18 red ball games in New Zealand enough to fast track him straight into the Test squad?
Yeah.
Apparently not. But also, Nicholas had other commitments going on as well. So
Yes, he played for Melbourne Stars in the
right,
BBL.
exactly. So he can't. It's a weird one because I think he played those games in New Zealand to show that he's willing to play some red ball cricket. But at the same time, he already had made commitments to other T20 franchise leagues. So it wasn't like that could then immediately catapult him into the Test side. So this is why I'm saying to you, they need to sit down and almost plot the entire year, not like series by series. Let's look at your next year of cricket. What are you committing to? You're obviously going to play IPL. We know that. We know you're going to play CPL, but West Indies don't play during that, so it's fine. And in fact, West Indies cricket block out IPL and CPL for all of the players to go and play. So we know you're playing those two tournaments. They need to sit with Nicholas and say, what other tournaments do you and your agent really want you to play? And which ones are you willing
did the
to?
same thing.
Sorry?
PCB also did the same thing with all their Pakistani players. So
Right,
they were
exactly,
playing all the leagues.
Yes.
So they now categorically they stated T10, PSL, CPL, and another tournament. I think so. It's LPL. That these four tournaments will be played. Other than that, no tournament will be played.
Exactly. So some kind of agreement needs to be reached where it's like, fine, you play IPL, you play CPL, tell us the next two or whatever it might be, and then now let's compromise. So, perfect example, Pollard. Since Pollard took over the West Indies captaincy, and a lot of people haven't realised this, Pollard no longer plays the entire PSL because he has told his agent, I have commitments for the West Indies cricket team as captain. So even if I get a PSL contract, tell them that I'm only playing 2 games and then I'm flying out because I've got to be with wherever West Indies are at that point
He
in time.
hasn't played a single game.
It's about doing that. It's about working out for the year ahead. We're not restricting you from playing a tournament, but can you only play X number of games and then come into a West Indies camp and so on and so forth?
Holder played 5 games last season for Sydney Sixers, I think so, BBL. To prioritize, I think so, a Test match series in New Zealand. Or after taking break.
I think this thing can be done by the players who are experienced, right? They know what they need to do, and they can just tell their agent that these are the series I want to be a part of, and these are the X number of games, like Mitchell said, I want to play. But for these young players, they are so bubbly; they want to go and show their talent everywhere. You as a player, if you get the opportunities to play in Australia, play in New Zealand, you know that's going to improve my game. I want to go and play. So who's going to stop me? I'm going to take the first opportunity I get, because as a youngster, even in life, 25, 26 is the stage where you are building yourself, you're building family and stuff. All those factors come in, so you need the money. So the money is a big factor.
And
If
that's
the
actually
money
that's a very important point. I think, thank you for raising that point, because as much as I say, look at Pollard, they've made their money.
Yeah,
They're in a position now. Andre Russell, Gale, Bravo, Pollard, Narayan, they're all in a position to pick and choose what they're doing. So as much as I'm saying it, okay, go back to Puran. Puran's played what 3 seasons of IPL now. He's
Hmm.
as much as he's a fantastic
Yes.
talent, he's still not established himself
Himself in
in
the
the
league.
in the way that a Pollard has established himself.
Yeah,
Pollard's so established he can captain Mumbai. Puran's not like that. So he
yeah,
technically still is at the whims of T20 cricket.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm just gonna go. Actually, I've got a
Sorry to
game.
interrupt over here, Machel, because we have to go fast. We just want
Yeah, one
your
last
playing.
question. Yeah,
Yeah,
Pawan, last question.
yeah,
I
sure.
mean, I've got a game as well myself just right now. So, Mitchell, just to round off a brilliant conversation, do you see the likes of Jaden Seals, the likes of Kima Roach spearheading this West Indian bowling attack, in Sri Lankan conditions and troubling the Sri Lankan batsmen with pace because that is one area where you can, really put Sri Lanka under pressure earlier with the new ball because they're very compact players of spin, and you can't really always rely on Rakeem Cornwell to win you test matches in Sri Lanka. So, do you think the pace factor in West Indies can make early inroads?
So this is the $1 million question. And when I get up
Hmm.
at 4:30 tomorrow, UK time, I will-
No, we completely agree with you, brother. We see 5 a.m. test matches in Australia, from
Yeah,
India. Even if India is
Seeing
not playing,
Australian
at least
matches.
get up 5 a.m. watch the
watching
action.
Australian matches, New Zealand matches. Yeah, at 3:30
so
in the morning.
Three
when I'm
o'clock in the morning.
when I'm
Yeah.
up, I'll see. But it is worth pointing out. Granted, it's different conditions, but
Mm,
the top wicket takers for us in the home series were Roach,
Hmm,
Holder, and Kyle Mayers.
hmm.
And actually, I was surprised, but possibly based on the point that you're making, not that surprised. Rakeem Cornwall didn't actually have that much success versus Sri
Hmm.
Lanka. If anything, the Sri Lankan batsman negated him fairly comfortably. That I still think he'll play. I still think he'll be playing
Yeah,
tomorrow,
uh,
and he should play. But you're saying Seals and Roach,
Roach.
and
Yeah,
I want to agree with you, but I
yeah,
just don't think because remember
hmm.
Holder definitely plays, and I
Yeah.
just
Hold it.
don't know in
sure.
the composition of a test side if West Indies can afford to go in with 3 out and out. If you count
Pacers.
Holder as pacers, because then
Yeah.
that means that your spinners would have to
Uh,
be Cornwall and probably Chase as an all rounder. But then that's
yeah.
two off spinners, and Warrican's surely got to come in as the left arm spin option as well. So
So,
the, the dynamics of the side, I don't
hmm.
think allow them to play 3 out and out paces. I think it only allows them to play one Holder, and then it's just about whether you play
Yeah, three
Carl
spinners.
Mayers.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Three
it's going
spinners.
to be really interesting to
I
see
think,
how they balance the side out tomorrow.
yeah, and
Yeah,
my gut feel
Major.
is,
Yeah,
as I feel Jaden Seals is a beautiful bowler, I just feel I'm getting the gut feel he's gonna miss out because, as you said, the composition of the side dictates that it's gonna be Holder, Myers, and you want to go in with experience. You just want to go in with Kima Roach. He's got the
Mm.
bundle of experience,
mm,
and for that, Seals will miss out. And thank you, Pawan, for having me on the
yeah,
show.
sure, no
Sorry to cut
problem.
you
Yeah.
guys short. Nice
Uh,
chatting with you, Mitchell.
No
And please,
problem.
please please check out my channel, The Direct Hit, as well. I just pinged you on Instagram a few days ago.
Yes,
Just
yes, yeah, yeah. I've got it.
yeah,
yeah.
thank you. Just I
Mitchell,
also got
one quick, yeah, one
yeah,
quick question to ask also. Yeah, Aryan, sure. Yeah.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
playing 11 for tomorrow. Quickly, if possible, Mitchell, and for
Yeah,
Sri
yeah.
Lanka as
So
well, if you
this
can.
is
Yeah.
what I think will happen. Brathwaite, Solozzano, Bonner at 3, Hope at
Yeah.
4, Blackwood at 5,
Yeah.
Mayers at 6,
Yeah.
Holder at 7, De Silva at 8, Cornwall at 9, Roach at 10,
Mm.
Warwican at
And
11.
on.
That's what I think will happen.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. And any ideas on Sri Lanka? I think Sri Lanka just released the
Well,
squad.
no,
Sri Lanka just
you
released
can't
it.
ask me to
Do
do
any?
this. You can't ask me to do the Sri Lanka one because they put 22 people in it. When I
If
saw
I'm going
22
with
people,
if I'm going with Sri Lanka, I think they may go with Dimuth, and maybe they'll go with Kamil Mishara and give him a debut, or give Asalanka debut. That could happen tomorrow. I think I will go with Kamil Mishara with his performance with Sri Lanka A. So I'll go with both of them because right
Yes.
hand, left hand. And then number 3, I'll bring in Oshada Fernando. Number 4, I'll
Oshadam.
bring in Dinesh Chandimal has to be in the squad. Angelo Matthews has to be back. But sorry, Pathum Nisanka will have to bat at number 5 for me. Maybe Matthews will bat at number 6. Number 7, I think they will go with maybe they go with DDS or Ramesh Mendis. I'm not sure who will they go. They have to go with 2 spinners for me, Praveen Jayavikrama and maybe Lakshan Sandakan will be given a chance, and then go
Or
with
Lasith
Dushmantha
Buldenia.
Chamira and Asita Fernando or Suranga Lakmal. Yeah, yeah. Satvik, yes, thoughts. Yeah.
I think so. Lasith Buldenia deserves a place in this side.
Yeah,
How he
yeah,
started
maybe.
his bowling
Mm,
in South Africa and then coming into Sri Lanka and being the bowler, which
yeah,
he's. I think
more
so.
than
He's the
Sandakan.
next
Yeah.
Herat. If I'm saying a little bit over the top, but he looks like a Herat type of a
Mm,
bowler.
true.
Skiddy,
Yeah.
economical, gets wickets. And I think so. West Indies has a problem of playing left arm spinners, and they had too many problems against Herat in the last in 2015. I think
Mm.
so.
Yeah, I think Sri Lanka won that test series, I think, back in
2
2015, the
nil.
last
yeah.
time that West Indies toured Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka. But I think this time West Indies do have a chance, I think, with this Sri Lankan side. No Thirimana. He's out due to personal reasons. So there's a problem with the opening pair for Sri Lanka. Then Ambul Denia back after an injury, I think. Matthews and Chandimal not playing test match because Sri Lanka also hasn't been playing test matches since that West Indies tour. And I think West Indies, I think they played against Pakistan, and it was a 1-1 series. And
South
I think the
Africa.
table wise, I think West Indies are third.
Mm.
So, Machel, I think West Indies do have a good chance coming up because their side is balanced compared to Sri Lanka. It could be a tight contest coming up in Galle, but hope the weather will be also fine. Yeah. But seeing the Sri Lankan squad, also, no Hasaranga. Also, I really don't know why Hasaranga is opted out. I think he's playing T10. I think that's the main issue why
Yes.
Hasaranga is not there. Sri Lanka also facing the same issues as West Indies right now. Yeah. So thoughts, yeah, on both. I mean, on Sri Lanka as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I think it's just worth. I mean, only a couple of things. I would certainly have Embel Denio on my side. I think he should. I think he has to be. Lakmal as well. He was the. He. We've always had a problem dealing with him.
Mm,
So I would assume he's a certainty. In the side as well.
right. Mm,
Um. I don't, do you know what? More so than who Sri Lanka end up picking, I think because of how the World Test Championship works and the fact that a
yeah.
draw gives you like percentage share of points.
Mm, true.
Really, in these 2-match test series, as the away side, the first thing you need to do is just not lose the first test. I think it's very hard once you lose the first one to come back strong in the second one. And certainly for West Indies, where for some players this will be the first time they come in here and so on and so forth. So I think ultimately Sri Lankas have to start favourites. They have to.
Yeah.
West Indies are going to come under a serious inspection via spin bowling. You would assume that that's what we've been focusing all our attention on. But then it's just worth pointing this out. When we went to Bangladesh, some of the same stuff that I'm saying to you now is what I said before Bangladesh. We're going to come under inspection from spin. Their spinners are better than ours. And we've got batsmen who are unfamiliar to the conditions in Sri Lanka. And we ended up winning 2-0. So in that sense, I don't think we should take this as a kind of like Sri Lanka are 100% favourites and that's the end of that. Actually, I think with this new West Indies test side, if Sri Lanka drop their standards by even 5%, then West Indies have a good enough team to take advantage of it. And again, in Bangladesh, what often gets forgotten about is that Cornwall and Warwican out-bowled the Bangladesh spinners. I don't think that will happen in Sri Lanka, but it is just worth noting that's what happened. And Warwican was good in Sri Lanka when he came in 2015.
15 years.
Yeah.
So it'll be very interesting to see how this pans out. And of course, what we also need to remember is what is the goal track actually going to be like? Because if it's flat, then actually it's about who wins the toss. Because if you get first bat on this track and it's flat, you basically can't lose a test match.
Hmm.
That's kind of important as well.
Yeah. I
Last
think
time there
West
was a
Indies
test
haven't
match.
beaten Sri Lanka in Sri Lanka before. I think
No,
in
no, they
history
haven't
wise, I
beaten
think,
Sri
and
Lanka.
yeah,
No,
in Sri Lanka, yeah. So could be a first for West Indies here, if I'm not
yes.
mistaken. Yeah, if they do win a test match, yeah. But they have drawn Sri Lanka, I think, in Sri Lanka, but they haven't won a test
2010
match.
series was drawn.
Mm,
Yeah, that was the
yeah.
last time. Yeah, they haven't
2015
played
was
that
won by
much
Sri
in.
Lanka.
They haven't played that much in Sri Lanka. This is the thing,
Yeah.
that Sri Lanka
Fourth
and
tour.
West Indies need to arrange more tours. This is good this year. At least this year there has been two, both in West Indies and Sri Lanka Test series. So that's good positive news. And even
Mm,
there was limited over series as well between the two sides. So that's good. And with the Test Championship, I think this is a crucial series for both. I hope West Indies do win one and make it very interesting right now. Hope they win at least the first and put Sri Lanka under pressure, because this is the last series for Mickey Arthur as well. So you never know, they could go off the back foot, as Machel and Aryan also said. Sri Lanka could go off the back foot. Yeah, but thank you so much, Machel, for coming. Been a long show over here, but thank you so much for taking your time. And please do check out the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and I'm surely checking all your episodes on that. So thank you so much for taking your time and coming on the sports breakdown, Major.
no worries.
Thank you,
Anytime, man.
Mr.
And let's see how this series goes, and let's talk either during it or after it. But if we lose and lose badly, you'll never see me again.
Yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen. Yeah, and Rohan here says, how West Indies play spin will decide the series. Yeah, very true. Even the 2020 World Cup, we saw how West Indies dealt with spin, and they lost. I mean, they lost all matches. I think they only won against Bangladesh. But
Mm.
yeah, in the 2020 World Cup, yeah. But thank you so much, Mitchell. I think you're busy right now. Yeah, and taking your time. It's been a long conversation, and thank you so much, Satvik, as well. Please do check out the Statsman on
Thank you,
Instagram.
Mr.
Yeah, and great episode. So thank you so much, guys, and we'll end it over here. So please do subscribe to the Sports Breakdown, and please do check out the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Subscribe to their channel as well. And it's a great pleasure speaking to Mitchell today as well. So yeah, we'll end things, and yeah, let's see how the first test match. Maybe we'll do a post match analysis of the first test between West Indies and Sri Lanka, and hope the series goes really well. So until then, we'll end it. And yes, see you guys, and thank you so much.
Yeah.